everybody. Welcome back to Best in Show Books. I'm Shelby.
I'm Jeanna.
We have a different kind of episode for you today. Also, still experimenting with our microphone. Jeanna and I were talking about planning future episodes, and this one we were really excited about, but honestly, unsure how it would go.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do classic mysteries, an episode about classic mysteries, but not ones that everybody has read.
Yes.
You know, we didn't want to do Death on the Nile or Maltese Falcon or things like that. We wanted them, A, to be summery, B, to be ones that were kind of off the beaten path. So we did end up choosing 2 Agatha Christie mysteries, but we're hoping that they're ones you haven't already read.
Yeah.
So Jeanna is going to start us off with the one that she read.
Yes, because we each picked one. And I chose Evil Under the Sun. So Evil Under the Sun takes place on a beach. And, of course, Poirot and his mustaches are there. I love that it says mustaches and almost like it's a character of its own. Like the way
I'm sure.
Like the way he messes with them and everything. So they're on a beach and it's a resort. So in England, that's kind of the thing in summer. People go on vacation and they take their holiday and they'll spend a couple of weeks in this resort-ish kind of place. And so you get this full picture of this resort. The description of it is this old house, and it even starts out with the history of the house and who owned it. And then as the characters come in and they get the description of each of the characters, some are American, some are British, some are married. You've got a vicar, you've got, the usual.
The vicar, I feel like, is a staple.
Oh, yeah,
Isn't there a vicar in like all
there
of her stories?
There has to be, yes. So you get all of these characters that are very unique. I love the couple, the Gardners, because I listened to this one on audiobook a lot. And the gentleman that did it, he's changed his voice. And so to hear him do her, it's hilarious. Oh. And then Odell is her husband. And she said, "Isn't that right, Odell?" And he'd like, "Yes, dear. Yes, dear." And so you get these very odd characters. So Helena is the character that ends up being murdered. And she is a very beautiful, sensuous, exotic beauty that every head turns when she walks by, and she has that it factor they talk about. And she's married, and the gentleman she's married to has been married a couple of times and has a daughter named Linda, so she's a stepmom. So you get the dynamic of, was she a good stepmother? Was she not? And then the husband, of course, because he'd been married before and his first wife had supposedly killed her husband and was acquitted of it when he married her. And then you have a lady who's Rosamond, a famous dressmaker. But she has a connection to the husband of the lady who dies. Okay. They were friends in childhood, and so there's maybe a unrequited romance there that maybe they should have married each other and not gone off their separate ways. And then you have this couple, young couple, Redfin is their last name, and he's the striking, handsome, bronzed, athletic guy, and she's the delicate little flower that doesn't want to be in the sun, and maybe thinking the husband is liking Helena, which is the exotic beauty. So you have all these characters that are coming into play at this hotel, and then of course the hotel staff and the proprietor, and then you've got the police department from the local town that comes in. And God bless them, these local police officers are always kind of painted a little off in Agatha Christie's stories, especially when Hercule Poirot is involved, because he's a brilliant puzzle piece putting together
and his
guy.
Little gray cells.
Yes. So there's one point in the story when, after the murder, that there's a lady putting together a puzzle in the inn, and she's really trying to find the piece. Like, she has one piece and she's trying to fit it, and he just walks over and sticks it in. She's like, "Well, how did you see that? It's a white piece. Why would you put that?" He said, "The tip of the cat's tail is white, and you couldn't see it," like in his little French accent. Yep. So through the whole book, he's puzzling this story out. He references this whole puzzle, and he's got all the pieces and he's laying it out, which I kind of thought was a neat little way of segmenting all that. And then Evil Under the Sun, because there is a vicar, they talk about Evil Under the Sun is a Bible reference. I enjoyed this. The characters are very vivid, even though there's a lot of them, which is typical Agatha Christie, having this huge cast of characters. It all takes place in one location. It's not necessarily a locked room, because it does happen on a beach.
It's a closed setting.
Yes. Yeah. Everything happens right there. It takes place within a few days. It doesn't drag out. It's not like it's a 6-month mystery. It's a few days. I like that but it is a big cast of characters, and every character is memorable. There isn't.
That's good.
Because when you have that many characters and they talk at the very beginning when they were starting to introduce them, like, oh my goodness, there's so many characters. I'm never going to remember them. But I did.
Mm-hmm.
They're well drawn. They're well developed. And I didn't know who it was that did it. Even the very end, I was like, oh. But typical Poirot. Everybody's gathered.
Yes. Yeah, for a big announcement.
For the big announcement. And I think I used to watch the Thin Man series of movies with my parents growing up. And he would do that too. He would bring everybody in the room. And so I always loved that was kind of that old school 1940s detective. So he walks through how the murder happens and why he suspected. And then, of course, Mrs. Gardner, but how did you figure it out? And so he works through the puzzle and tells her how he did it. So I enjoyed it. It was different because I loved Then There Were None. I really liked Murder on the Orient Express. That was Death on the Nile, and there was a few others that were Poirot that I've read. This one probably ranked a little lower for me, but I still enjoyed the book, and I liked that it was summery and on the beach, and they talked about the tides and the island and the inn, and it was kind of a neat location for sure. So I enjoyed this one.
Do you feel like listening to it on audiobook, having such a large cast of characters, made the overall experience of it more memorable?
I do for this one because I think Agatha Christie is really conversation-driven, that dialogue-driven. And so hearing all of the voices, and especially when you know what Poirot's supposed to sound like, so when he comes on, and he sounds just like the guys in the movies that play him, you know. And so I really enjoyed that in this. And probably the first one I've ever read on audiobook. Most of the others I've always had an actual book of it. And I just was in a position this week that extremely busy. So I needed to be able to do it on the go a lot. And so I could listen to it in the car. And
the narrator can make or break it.
Yes.
Well, I'm glad that you liked it and that it did live up to its summary expectations that we were hoping for.
So it's definitely a good read, and it's definitely a fun, I say fun read even though it's a mystery.
I know, yeah.
But the characters are quirky, and I think that's the joy of Agatha Christie too, is these characters have such personality. So if we're not reading another Hercule Poirot, where are we going now?
I chose Death Comes as the End. And like I said earlier, I went into this episode with quite a bit of trepidation because, and I can say this because Agatha Christie is dead and she's not coming back for me, not that I know of. But I just don't really like her books. You know, I enjoyed Death on the Nile, and Then There Were None, Murder on the Orient Express. But beyond that, like, that's okay. I don't really care for Poirot at all. In fact, I started another Poirot book for this episode, and I told Jeanna, I put it down and was like, I can't stand this little man and like his eccentricities, and just the way he like addresses people. And I also grew up on a steady diet of like the BBC Poirot, so I'm like, it's like ingrained into me. So I wanted something that was 100% not Poirot. So Death Comes as the End is one of her very, very few standalone stories that is not a detective. It is not set in Europe, and it is not set in the 20th century. And let me just start by saying 5 stars. 5 stars, 6 stars, 7 stars. Loved it. It was one of the best books I've read this year.
Oh, that's great.
And I can't say enough good things about it. Anyways, so the story is the main character, her name is Renaissance, and all of the names are ancient Egypt. I probably should have said this because the book takes place in ancient Egypt,
which
like 2000 BC. So that was another reason I was like, I think I'm going to like this. Renaissance is the adult daughter of a mortuary priest named Imhotep. So if this is not your thing, like, don't get bogged down by the names because the plot holds its own, so bear with me through the names if that's going to be, you know, a sticking point for you. Renaissance comes home to the family compound after her husband dies, and she's been away for maybe like 5 or 8 years. And right away you're introduced, just like in your story, to a very large cast of characters. She has a younger brother, Ippy. She has an older brother, Yachmoza.
Oh my!
And and they have
doing good.
They have wives, Kite and Seti, and there's a housekeeper, and her name is Hennet, and she has been with the family. Oh, and I almost forgot. One of my favorite characters, there's a grandmother in the home, Asa, and she is the wise, witty
Okay.
grandmother you hope to have. She was very much reminded me of my own grandmother,
that's
or of
great.
like Granny from Downton Abbey. So you have this very large cast of characters that you're immediately introduced to. So I was also like, oh no, I'm going to get really bogged down. But I did also listen to this on audiobook.
Okay.
And it was one of the few books I've actually finished on audiobook. And the narration was phenomenal.
Oh, good.
It was so good. And everybody had different names. But one thing I thought was really funny was that it took place in ancient Egypt. And the voices were all British.
Oh.
Except for the housekeeper, who was like very Scottish. And it was just
that's hilarious.
a little oddity, but it was fine. I liked it. And so the family, these older siblings, are all kind of bickering amongst each other over power in the estate, we'll call it that, because the father, as a priest, travels a lot. And so he's gone, and in his absence, there's a vacuum, and the brothers are like, well, I should be in charge. Then the father comes home, and Imhotep brings with him Nofret, who is a young concubine wife, Yeah. And so Nofret comes in. She is young. She is beautiful. And how many times have we heard this story before, that an older father comes home with a young wife, and the adult children are like, where do I fit in into the estate? Is she going to take my money? I don't have to listen to her. And so the dynamics of it were very modern as I listened to the siblings argue and speak to the father, and the housekeeper, which I feel like is also an Agatha Christie staple. You got the vicar and the housekeeper. And so
this is true.
Yeah. And so nobody likes Nofret, and Renaissance, the main character, she is very kind of vapid. She's not a real smart gal. And you get that when she talks to people. Even her voice in the narration is like, well, I don't understand. People will be like, oh, Renaissance, you are so innocent. And so she tries to befriend this concubine new wife, and she's kind of a mixed bag, Nofret. You don't really know, is she good? Is she bad? She does things and you're like, she's evil. And then it's like, well, wait, is she misunderstood? And so very early on in the story, Nofret dies.
Oh, okay.
And then the issue is, who has done this?
Okay.
And as I was reading some analysis on the story, they actually compared it to And Then There Were None because of the high amount of deaths, because Nofret is not the only person to die in the story. So
interesting.
It was wonderful. It's one of the few Agatha Christie books that do not have an adaptation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like, why? I guess it's
like it should be.
Yes. And I think it's stuck in like production limbo because it was supposed to be adapted in like 2018 or something like that. However, the plot line where the father brings home a young wife, we've seen that all before, but I really enjoyed this book, and the ending I just loved. I felt like it was really good. And then as I was reading about it, it's not the ending that Agatha Christie wanted. Someone said, you should change it, and you should change it to this. So she did. And her original ending, I don't know what it was.
Oh, well, there's a mystery in itself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool. So Imhotep, I remember the name from The Mummy. Is it the same Imhotep?
I don't think so, because he was like a straight up villain in The Mummy.
Yeah, I know. So, and he was a priest that was like with the Egyptian kings and queens. So, okay.
And he kind of did that, but I think it was just
borrowed the name
coincidentally. Yeah.
So very cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
It was really good. And I guess because her husband was an Egyptologist, it felt very authentic, but not like bogged down. And she
traveled with him.
Yeah. And you can definitely tell that she had like some extensive knowledge, and she would punctuate the chapters second day of summer or something like that. They kind of went seasonally, but then sometimes things would happen very quickly, and then it would jump to another season. So, but even in doing that, though it didn't take place over like a week, it still had a really good flow to it. And I listened to this in the car a lot, and I had my kids in the car sometimes, and I was like, okay, well, it's Agatha Christie, so it's going to be like clean. Yeah. And they were very invested in this.
Oh, that's good.
And I don't like them to listen to like murder, but there were a lot of mysterious things that would happen, and they would be like, well, was it a ghost? Who put that there? And so
in Egypt, they probably like were involved, like enjoyed the Nile and the. Did they talk about the scenery?
Yep, they talk about the Nile and Upper and Lower Egypt and things like that.
Okay, I'm excited because I read Death on the Nile. And I enjoyed that was one of hers. It's a Perot, but I really enjoyed that one. So and I liked the setting because they're on the ship and they're sailing down the Nile. So okay,
did you watch the movie for that?
I did.
What'd you think? I know it was a beautiful movie.
It is, and he's done a couple of her adaptations, and I can't think. Kenneth Branagh.
Is it? Yeah, it is Kenneth Branagh because he did Murder on the Orient Express too,
which I'm not happy with.
Well, that was so different.
It was so different. Yes, and I think because that ending for that book is so good and it's so unique. When they changed the ending in the movie, I was aggravated.
It was very different.
Yeah, it was a good movie, and he's a good actor. And there's such a cast when they film these. I mean, huge names. And Death on the Nile was the same way. Yeah. It was beautifully shot. It was really good, but it's just you cannot compare them to the books.
Right.
You have to go into it and I'm like, I'm going to watch this good movie. And I didn't watch the one. They've done a third one.
Yes.
And I haven't
Haunting
watched
in
that
Venice.
one. Yes. Because it was a different name on the book.
Yes, it was Halloween Party.
It was the one that we read.
Yes.
And so I did not realize that, and I have yet to watch the movie version. But I've heard, again, it's very different as well.
It's very different. But it was like, I was very scared. Very scared. I like to be scared, but there were scenes in it that I can like see in my head, and I'm like, the way that Kenneth Branagh like filmed it, it was much like his other movies, very cinematic and visual, but like the story is totally different. So I think in that one, it's got to be like loosely inspired. There's a
little gnat. Yeah, I know. That's why I didn't watch it, because I knew it was so different, and I wanted to see what people said about it, and so I'll have to watch it now. I'll have to look it up.
And so our mystery book club in store read The Halloween Party, an Agatha Christie book. Again, something we wanted kind of obscure to read, and it was so funny because the group hated that. It was like,
liked it.
Did you like it?
That's
good.
I like Agatha Christie though, and I really I think I appreciate her style. It's a style. I really liked too. I know in the Agatha Christie, Tuppence and
Tommy and Tuppence.
I liked the BBC series.
Oh,
so
I didn't see that.
I would like to go back and read some of the books because I thought they were an enjoyable husband-wife duo that get involved in solving murders that neither one of them are detectives.
Oh, really?
When it starts out, it was quirky and funny. So I'm thinking that maybe this might be a lighthearted series. So if you've read any of those, let us know, because that's always been on my list of I got to move on. I do not, or at least the couple that I've tried, the Miss Marple. I had trouble getting into those. But again, there's a lot of Vicar.
Yes.
And I think that one, she's single, so she's older. I don't know. The TV series I enjoyed, but I had trouble getting into the book on that one. So,
yeah, I just totally avoided that. Yeah. And Tommy and Tuppence, I was like, nope.
I like Agatha Christie, and I'm excited to hear from you guys to see if you've read these two, which we felt like were unique.
Yeah, and summery. Like,
yes.
It doesn't get much summery than like a coastal resort and the sands of ancient Egypt.
Yes. So. If you want to purchase these books, we will have the links down below, and we also will have links to our Goodreads, our Instagrams. We're trying to keep up with all the socials.
This is us juggling many balls right now.
Yes. And so if you would like and subscribe so that you keep up and you know what we're all chatting about and talking about, we would really appreciate it. And go ahead. Sorry.
Let me interject. Sorry.
Yeah.
And one more thing we would also love to hear from here or in like the YouTube like community post or anywhere else is a future episode that you would like to see us do. Like, we're always on the lookout for something new and different to read, review, or even just discuss and talk about. So we value all of your comments like very highly and are constantly discussing them. So until next time, this was Best in Show Books. I'm Shelby.
I'm Jeanna.
Thanks so much for watching.